Good evening. Thanks for having me. My name is Hernan Adasme. I am a fourth year history PhD student at George Mason University. My research interest and my dissertation is about the sporting black migration, the movement, the migration of Afro descended athletes from the Caribbean and the US to Chile within the first decades of the 20th century to launch careers in the growing combat sports industry, mainly boxing, but also wrestling in a minor way, also jiu-jitsu. My presentation is called I Am a Pugilist and Not a Mere Adventurer. Calvin Ruspress and the Making of a Professional African American Boxer in the Southern Con, 1914 1921. I am a pugilist and not a mere adventurer, asserted African American boxer Calvin Ruspress in a letter to the Chilean News of Valparaiso in November 1914. Days earlier, black British boxer William Daly, who had fought in Valparaiso's rings for nearly a decade, publicly questioned Ruspress' suggestion of being the fifth best black boxer in the world. The name of Respress, quote unquote, said William Daly, had never come up as a boxer because he is nothing more than an outsider. It surprises me, continued Daly, as he claims, that he occupies the fifth place among the world champions. In response, Respress doubled down on the legitimacy of his credentials by saying, I am a professional of the sport. I live off it. I have come to South America determined to prove that I am a boxer and not just to proclaim that I am one. Respress had a point. He was, in fact, connected to the elite of boxing. In 1912, Calvin Respress joined heavyweight champion Jack Johnson's entourage, and in 1914, he traveled Europe to assist an exiled Johnson in preparing for his bout against Frank Moran. As World War One unfolded, Respress made his way to South America, arriving in Chile with the reputation of having trained the most famous African American athlete in the globe. In spite of his boxing resume, Calvin Ruspress faced constant reputational attacks from journalists, sports editors, and other athletes. He struck back with both words and actions. Ruspress fought, wrestled, sparred, seconded, and trained countless other boxers, earning success and respect from his peers. However, Ruspress' time in Chile ended abruptly. In 1920, he was accused of fixing matches, investigated for the kidnapping of an underage girl, and banned from boxing due to alleged health problems. This paper analyzes a corpus of texts around Respress' career in Chile, as it sheds light on the dense texture of a particular historical juncture, Chile's entry point into a racialized and hierarchical ecosystem of mainstream global sports. This corpus includes Respress' own voice, as he participated directly in debates, exchanges, advertisements, and interviews, and were published in the press on a regular basis. This article argues that Calvin Respress, more than just a boxer, but also a cultural producer, negotiated his position as an African American boxer within a discourse that's shaped by set of oppositions: black and white, civilization, barbarism, professional boxer, opportunistic adventurer, authentic fake, and foreign national. Respress's microhistory, particularly his exchanges with the press, offers valuable insight into how black athletes navigated transnational ideas and cross-class cultural circuits with strategic awareness. Sports historiography has overlooked the presence of Calvin Respress in the Southern Con, alongside other Afro descended fighters coming from the US and the Circum-Caribbean region. Boxing scholarship has not linked the arrival of athletes to the Southern Con to a broader context of migration that includes the experiences of mobility and segregation among African Americans, the displacement of populations in the West Indies amid imperial disintegration, and the condition of Afro descendant populations in the Spanish Caribbean as the US emerged as the new global hegemon. The corpus of representations in the printed press about Calvin Ruspress constitutes a complex construct shaped by several overlapping stereotypes, broadly grounded in two parallel hierarchies. First, eugenic and folk racial notions of racial difference, and secondly, a hierarchy of mass cultural products. Blackness was the overarching marker of how sports writers represented Calvin Respress in the media. Chile's printed press portrayed blackness as both a problem and a threat. Representations typically combine fear of black sexuality with a mix of awe and fascination with the black body, along with, with anxiety over the so called pervasive social impacts of the migration of mobile Afro descendant populations. Respress navigated prevailing anxieties about black male sexual desire for Chilean women by consistently emphasizing his marital status and his attachment to Chile. Quote unquote, I have married a Chilean woman, declared Respress in an interview with El Sur in 1917, and I built my home in this cultural noble city, referring to Concepcion, the city of Concepcion. Respress also presented himself as having forged a connection with Chile, and the city of Concepcion in particular, through his role as an athlete. I have grown fond of Chile and its generous and brave sons, said Respress in 1917. And using the third person, he added, we shall see now how well Respress defends the colors of Concepcion. Respress wielded the fascination with the black athletic attitude to his own benefit in several fight advertising articles. Newspapers' editors exploited the exotism of blackness by emphasizing Respress' physicality in ads for his boxing matches. Variety magazines like Sucesos and Zigzag featured Respress as a color champion and a black colossus, while Santiago's newspapers highlighted his excellent musculature and astonishing speed, as well as the vitality of his muscles and lightness. The newspaper La Unión de Valparaíso described Respress as a terrible Negro, Chicago's champion Jack Johnson trainer, and printed a full back picture of Respress posing in the rear double bicep pose. Although Respress capitalized on the awe inspired by the black body, he also crafted a persona as an expert in physical training. For the Chilean press, black physicality was seen as the sole source of athletic ability. As Ben Carrington explains, the trope of the black athlete reduces individual accomplishment to the universal category of blackness, reinforcing race as a quote unquote demonstrable fact of ontological difference. Respress rotated ads blending stereotypes of blackness with new associations of African Americans and modernism. By inviting those quote unquote interested in the most modern training methods to witness the experiences of training of the terrible color boxer. Respress promoted one of his exhibitions in Concepcion by offering to the public to quote unquote showcase the different training systems of the great boxing champions of the world. As a black boxer, Respress was framed into two oppositional images, grounded in two parallel hierarchies the black sailor turned into an adventuring prize fighter, and the black athlete, shaped by circulating ideas and images of Jack Johnson as the epitome of the idea of black racial athletic attitude. These two images map Respress into a dual hierarchy, a racialized class position as a maritime worker and a low position in a certification of mass cultural products. The association of black boxers with deserting sailors functioned as a permanent stigma. Afro-descended boxers that had been sailors wouldn't be any more than savage prize-fighting sailors. It sought to confine them to a racialized class identity heavily associated with vagrancy and perceived as existing outside the bounds of any recognized national identity. Calvin Respress countered the runaway sailor narrative by defining himself as the standard of a legitimate professional athlete. He openly rejected the categories of an adventurer and a sailor. Quote unquote, I arrived in Valparaiso, noted Respress in an interview in 1917, and the same month I demonstrated that I was a true boxer and not just any sailor. These words echoed the first letter he sent to a Chilean newspaper, quoted in the intro, when he declared, I am a pugilist and not a mere adventurer. Calvin's association with Johnson reinforced the contrast between a premier mass cultural product and its second class counterpart. Representations of Jack Johnson in the media became the gold standard for black racial athletic attitude, to which Respect, particularly given the close relationship between each other, was consistently and unfavorably compared. In an article published in La Nación, a commentator wrote, Respect This man has never held fights with boxers, and in Paris, he did not make an appearance for even a second. He earned the title of champion of Chicago by wrestling with Jack Johnson while working at Johnson's bar in the city. In another article, the same author declared that, quote unquote, none of the African American boxers in Chile are true champions. And in the United States, they would be classified as fifth or even 10th rate boxers. To reinforce the image as a professional boxer, Rispres leveraged his resume as a former member of Jack Johnson entourage. El Mercurio del Paraíso described Respres as a reputed professional who holds the title of Jack Johnson manager. Respres inflated his role in the Johnson's success, although he had been one of several sparring partners during 1910, 12, and in Paris in 1914. An article in November 1914 issue of Sucesos magazine celebrated Respres as Chicago's champion, Jack Johnson former trainer and physical coach. Respres embraced his unfavorable placement within a ranking of world class athletes and turned it into an asset. He implicitly ranked himself as the world's fifth best black boxer. In a 1914 interview with La Union, he claimed to have issued challenges to the American press to fight any boxer in the world, and that he was convinced that he had good chances of triumphing against all of them, except for these four: Jack Johnson, Sam Lanford, Sam McBee, and Joe Jeanette. However, he maintained that, given time, he could match their skill. They are professionals, said Respres in the same interview, who have been dedicated to boxing for 16 years, compared to my 5 years in the profession. To wrap up, Calvin Respres' story shows how African American boxers navigated a discursive field structured by oppositions. The body of press coverage surrounding Respres reveals a layered and contradictory set of portrayals shaped by intersecting discourses of race and popular culture. Respres emerged as a figure suspended between enduring racial stereotypes, a racialized class position, and the emerging image of a modern black athlete. These debates reveal how mass culture and the commercialization of sports became central to racial discourse in the early 20th century. During this period, international sports was not only about national competition, but also about confronting and redefining racial difference across the color line, something that Calvin Respes understood and strategically reimagined his role as a black boxer in the Southern